Hello everybody, here is another video in my series on musical subjects, and before I get started I really need to explain something to you because we're talking about music, but mainly of course we're talking about asteroid astrology, and we're talking about a subject that I happen to know a lot about, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to explain what my strategy is. You see, asteroid astrology is very unpopular, and nobody's really paying attention to it. So when you do videos about it, there's almost nobody watching, and that's perfectly fine. That's just what I expected. There's no problem at all. The point is that I'm making these videos for people to watch in, say, 20 years. I think a whole generation of astrologers has to die and be buried. I wish them long health, don't get me wrong, but a whole generation has to disappear, I think, before a new generation of astrologers will start to pay more serious attention to the factor of asteroids in an astrological chart. And what I'm trying to do is to help create methods, approaches to this new stuff. And the reason why I choose a subject, music, and specifically in this case Kraftwerk, that I know a lot about, is simply that I want to minimize the chance that I make fatal mistakes. If you are listening to me talking about Kraftwerk, that probably means that you know something about electronic music, or you like Kraftwerk or whatever. And so what makes me an expert? Well, the first thing is a very astrological reason. I was born very close to the city of Düsseldorf, which is where Kraftwerk comes from, and in this region the core members, they all live there. And so I know this place. It's 50 kilometers from the place where I was born, and I know the culture, I know what it feels like, and I know a lot of their cultural references as well, because it just so happens that I'm also interested in the art references that they make to stuff like the film Metropolis, but also the Weimar Republic, the retro futurism of all these European art styles that came up in between the 1890s and the 1930s. So anything from Dadaism to Expressionism, and especially the Bauhaus. I know all that stuff because I studied it a little bit. And then also I happen to be a producer of electronic music. So I will really go at this subject from a point of view where I know what subject that I'm talking about. And that might get confusing for people who don't know what a synthesizer is, you know. So I apologize in advance for people who are not that deep into the stuff. I might be going a little bit quick here and there, but I'm absolutely serious about what I say, and I'm trying to make an analysis that is as objective and as correct as I can possibly make it. So that's the higher goal there. The structure of the video will be pretty much the same as the Beatles episode. I will start with some name asteroids, and I have to apologize in advance to Wolfgang Fleur, to Karl Bartos, and many others who have played a crucial role in the Kraftwerk Gesamtkunstwerk. I mean, there is so much stuff that I could touch on, but what you get is you get charts that become unreadable. So I have focused for the name asteroids only on the core members, Ralf Hütter and Florian Schneider, and on the Gesamtkunstwerk itself, the band Kraftwerk Man-Machine. And that's what I focus on in the name asteroids. Then the thematic asteroids, I'll get into all those themes that inspire Kraftwerk that are relevant for their music and relevant even for the way they compose music. And then part 3 will be like backgrounds, cultural background, you could say. And part 4 is really going into the nitty-gritty of the music, like the type of bass lines that they make and the stuff that the equipment that they use to actually produce their music. And that's pretty much it, so let's get started. The first core member of Kraftwerk is Ralf Hütter, classically trained German musician, born I think in Krefeld, if I'm right, which is around the corner, again, same area as Düsseldorf. There is no personal asteroid for him. I mean, Kraftwerk never got their asteroids the way the Beatles did. Incidentally, there is a discussion nowadays who is more important, the Beatles or Kraftwerk. That is not a valid discussion in my opinion, because they function very differently. The Beatles were like a cultural phenomenon in the 60s, and Kraftwerk is also a cultural phenomenon, but mainly in the German context, and is more like a musical phenomenon worldwide. So that's out of the way. But anyway, Ralf Hütter, no personal asteroid, but we do have Ralf, we have Hut and Hutten, and these three work very well. And then there is a secondary asteroid that does not work very well, but I don't want to discard it, and that is Ralf Hofner. It is this pattern where you see that the first name is correct and then the first letter of the second name is also correct. That is a indication that an asteroid will have enough, let's say, associative potential, or however you want to call it, enough meaning in it to make valid associations. Then Florian Schneider, his full last name is Schneider Esleben. I did not look at the Esleben part. Schneider is a totally valid asteroid for that. And then we have Floria, which is not the same as Florian, definitely not. But it works. And Floris Jan is actually a Dutch name, a combination of Floris and John, so two names. But if you combine them in a morphological sense, it becomes Floris Jan, Florian. I mean, it is very close in a morphological sense. Yeah, maybe I use that word too much, but it's like what the word looks like. Then this is the first surprise. I really liked because, well, the first thing I did is look, is there an asteroid that starts with the word Kraft? Yes, there is one. It's called Kraft. And then I thought, well, I'm missing the part Werk. Is there any asteroid that starts with Werk? Well, there is one, Werkhoven, works fine. Then we have Werik or something like that. It works, they're both okay. But there is one asteroid that really is the most important of all. And actually you have to be German or have to speak German to appreciate the connection that's going on here. The asteroid Rote Kapelle. Well, Rote Kapelle in German, that is almost the same as Red Orchestra. And what is Rote Kapelle? It is actually a spy network, I think you could say a Russian spy network that was created during the Second World War to gather information on the movements of the Nazi army in Germany, but also in France, across whole Europe. This was just like Kraftwerk is a European thing. This Rote Kapelle was also a network of spies all over Europe. And well, I think this is a wonderful demonstration of the logic of asteroids, to see that Rote Kapelle is in fact the most important name asteroid for the band Kraftwerk. And like I said before, Karl Bartos, Wolfgang Flür, but also the drummer Klaus Dinger, Emil Schult, who is a graphic designer, very important for the style of Kraftwerk, and Conny Plank, the producer who did a lot of work up to the Autobahn album. You can find them all, and just pause and write down the names if you're interested. But I did not really need to follow them to tell the story that I want to tell here, which is basically about the bigger lines of the story. And so it would add too much detail, and that's why I don't actually use these names in charts. But if you want to check it out, you can use these name asteroids. So now we come to the thematic asteroids. Again, I've tried to use as little asteroids as possible, although that is not always easy. Let's start with the geographical asteroids, so to speak. The Kraftwerk project is totally situated in mainland Europe. Like Karl Bartos said, they are musicians who are not born in the Mississippi Delta, referring to American blues and jazz, black music in general in the United States. And he said, we are also not born in Liverpool, of course, referring to the Beatles. And what Kraftwerk did was create a thoroughly European music. You could call it German, but I think European is a little better. And what asteroids can we combine with that? And when it comes to Germany, and that includes the whole history of the Germanic people, I mean Germania and Germanicus and Teutonia, you can think of these as referring to the whole history of that piece of land that we call Germany nowadays. It has been bigger, it has been smaller, but there is this core idea of Germanness, and that is caught in Germania, Germanicus, Teutonia, and folk. Also, folk means the people. There's also another asteroid, Populus, which is basically the same thing, only a Latin word, but I didn't use that. I only used Volk, also because Kraftwerk talks about industrielle Volksmusik, which is industrial folk music, which is an ironic term for that they used to refer to their own sounds. Germania, Germanicus, Teutonia. It's difficult to feel the right to get it right. What is this pointing to? Is it, let's say, pointing to conservative aspects in the German culture, or is it also pointing to progressive aspects in the German culture? It's sometimes difficult to find out which is which, and I think you should draw your own conclusions there or make your own analysis. Krauter, that is the closest thing to krautrock, which was, you can say that Kraftwerk was a part of krautrock. That would not be incorrect, but on the other hand, the things that set Kraftwerk apart from the krautrock phenomenon are in your face. They use computers much more, they use synthesizers much more, and they are really not krautrock, I would say. If you think of krautrock, the first thing I think of is Kann, and these are musicians who play live, who improvise, and Kraftwerk's aesthetic is really different. And how you see this in the charts is that Krauter, which is really the closest thing to krautrock, it's playing a marginal role, I would say. And then finally, Europa and Europeist are just references to Europe, nothing special there. And now we have to turn to the end of the Second World War, which is when Ralph and Florian were born. And they were born into, you could say, a cultural vacuum that was created by the Nazis. And the thing that Ralph and Florian really tried was to fill this vacuum with German elements from before the Nazi period, and that's really a special thing. That's the Germanness of the whole Kraftwerk project, and you can actually look at this. Yeah, I call it here bad karma. You could say difficult karma of the German people as a whole. You can see that it plays a role in the charts that we're going to look at. You see, it's very obviously there. But okay, how do you do this in asteroid language? Well, there is one asteroid, and I've touched on it in earlier videos. I can't actually remember which ones, but I've talked about Ixion before. It is you can imagine it like when you look at the Bible, you have the story of Cain and Abel, and what this story is about is the first murder of family members. And exactly the same thing is the core of the mythology of Ixion. He slays his father-in-law, and he is severely punished for that. And how this works out in asteroid astrology is well, Ixion is a very complicated asteroid, I have to say. It's a Plutino, but if you boil it down to the essence, you can, one of the main things you can use it for is to look at this collective bad karma thing in the case of Kraftwerk, and I will show you some examples of that. You also see that I literally look at the asteroid that's called Karma, but more important, I think, is the asteroid Selqet. And who is Selqet? That is an Egyptian goddess of, let's say, the antidote. What you see on her head there is a Scorpio. So she is like the Scorpio is the poison, and Selqet is the antidote to the poison. And I saw Selqet in combination with Ixion, and because it is so obvious what you have there, I mean bad karma and an antidote to the bad karma, I thought I would concentrate on that simply because you don't need a lot of interpretation there. And I have to say Selqet is not the strongest asteroid in this story, but I chose to focus on it anyway, just to keep it simple and understandable. And then there is the general tendency of utopianism, which is that's the direction you go in as an artist when things are really bad. You build a new utopia, and fortunately there is an asteroid named Utopia that is perfect for this. And then you see two less well. Chariklo is reasonably well known. Chariklo is a centaur. Chariklo is mythologically the wife of Chiron, the wounded healer. But I mean, when you look at the internet nowadays, you see all kinds of interpretations of Chariklo that I do not agree with, I have to say. And what I use it for in this analysis is and with the help of Benjamin Adema, again, I should say, the Dutch asteroid specialist, I look at Chariklo as the mindset that facilitates utopian thinking. And exactly the same is true for Wilson Harrington. So these two point to exactly the same thing, and they are thematically very close to utopia. The difference being that utopia is literally about what it says on the can, and Chariklo and Wilson Harrington have the quality of a mindset that is optimistic, that is interested in technology, that is interested in the future, and so on and so on. So really a mindset that is conducive to building utopian music. Let's put it like that. And then Bauhaus, Gropius, and Weimar. Gropius is referring to the architect Walter Gropius, who was the founder of the Bauhaus, which was an art school using a completely new approach to teaching students art. And this Bauhaus, it started right after the First World War, and fast forward, end of the Second World War, we have Kraftwerk trying to come up with a new cultural identity, and what they go back to is the Bauhaus. You could say that the whole Bauhaus project was put on pause by the Nazis, and that after the Second World War, you could say that the spirit of the Bauhaus was revived, not only by Kraftwerk, but by many other German artists who look back to this period. And this utopia has a cultural side, but it also has a technical side. I mean, every type of futurism that you can think of has this advanced technique, right? And there's asteroids. There's plenty of asteroids for that. I made a little joke here. Vorsprung durch Technik. This is a famous German car brand. Uses that slogan. But you could equally use it for Kraftwerk. They were, inventing their own musical instruments. They were quite advanced, at least in the pre-MIDI times, I should say, because at a certain moment the actual technique simply caught up with them, but that's not very important right now. The aesthetic was automation, was robots, and probably the number one asteroid you should look at here is Make, which is a dwarf planet. It packs some more power than the other ones. And Make, just look at the word here. It says make 2 times, make to make. And that's what this one points to. It is about building stuff, about let's say advanced technology in general, advanced engineering. And in that sense, it's a very Kraftwerkian, is that a word, dwarf planet to look at, important one. And then the other ones, Autonoma and Automedon, they are, in my opinion, basically pointing to the same thing. And that is autonomy in the sense of a machine doing its own thing. You can turn it on and it will just keep doing its thing. And that could be a rhythm box, it could be any kind of thing. Robot is very literally the robots. I should really not have to explain that, but just look at the song We Are the Robots if you're not familiar with Kraftwerk, or look at the actual robots that they built. I mean, that's you see them here. And then finally Boole, that needs a little bit explaining maybe. Boole is about Boolean logic, and it is really a machine type of intelligence, to put it like that, and it's playing a role. And now we get to the effect that Kraftwerk was after with their music. It is on the one hand there is this utopian thing, and on the other hand you have the hypnosis type of thing that is connected to electronic pulsating music that just goes on and on, that has this hypnotic quality, like Autobahn, for example. So there is there is a connection between the idea of utopia and the idea of being hypnotized. And I think if you just look at the photo there, you see the way these guys are gazing into the distance. That is a utopian gaze, and it is also, you could even imagine that they are hypnotized in some sense. It's maybe I'm going a bit too far, but I think it all comes together. And if you have somnium and hypnos, they can be connected to the hypnotizing aspect of the music. And there are also some more typically German asteroids that point in the same direction. Lorelei is a kind of a siren who is connected to the river Rhine, which is very close to, I mean the Rhineland is also the region where Kraftwerk comes from in a sense. And then you have the idea of the Zauberflöte, which is a magical flute that also hypnotizes. Chanting is also a form of hypnotizing, and then you should again think of a song like Autobahn. And singer, well, it just shows up, and that's why I put it there. Sometimes you just find stuff, and singer is connected with the let's say the musical side of Kraftwerk, and more important even to me, at least as a musician, is the formal qualities of the music. And well, minimalism is of course a simple one, and that can be found in using minin and miniti. You have still there that you should really read their style, so a style of music. But important are here abstracta and especially symmetria. And that is, you could say that is a way to describe computer music if you compare it to live music made, for example, by a symphony orchestra. I mean, Ralph and Florian, they both studied classical music, and they come very much from that tradition, and then create something new. And the formal difference between the old stuff and the new stuff can almost be completely compressed into one subject, and that is symmetria. And why do I say that? Well, if you see later on when we talk about Autobahn, you see, for example, that image, the traffic sign, the blue one with the Autobahn on it, it's symmetric. But also computerized beats are symmetric. I would even say that the most symmetric music is this really square techno house that you got at a certain moment, where that is completely dominated by a very loud kick drum that is like, let's say, too symmetric. And so you can have extreme amounts of musical symmetry, which is completely rigid pumping bass drums, but you can also have a little less symmetry, but still, I mean, in a musical sense, at least for me personally, the use of drum computers and sequencers, it suggests straight lines and also symmetry. And even the word symmetria, metria, you can think of that metria as meter. So there is even a musical aspect to the word symmetria. And now we get to some references that will especially make sense if you know your way around the history of classical music. Maybe I should start with Schumann. That is very simple. That is the classical composer Robert Schumann we're talking about here. And it's not because his music was an influence, not at all. It is because the school or conservatory, I think is the word, where all of the core Kraftwerk members went to was named the Robert Schumann Hochschule. So that Schumann really refers to the school where they went, where all the core Kraftwerk members had their technical training. And then there are two other references that I think are very important. Honegger is the Swiss-French composer of the group Les Six, they were called, SIX. Honegger made a piece that is called Pacific 231. It is a ode to a train or something like that, and I will show you some more of that later on. But Darmstadt is maybe a bit simpler. You see the photo there on the right. On the far right you see Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. So I just bumped into these two, Honegger and Darmstadt, and they made sense because Darmstadt is a city in Germany, but in the context of looking at the charts for Kraftwerk, it is very simply pointing to the summer courses that were held there, the famous summer courses where classical musicians got together and exchanged really new avant-garde ideas about classical music. So think about people like Pierre Boulez, the ultra serialist, and I don't know actually who these people on the left are on the photo, but Stockhausen was also a bit of a serialist, but much more important, he started fooling around with tape and with well, let's say very early versions of the synthesizer, and that's just Kraftwerk stuff. So no surprise that Darmstadt shows up. Then also we have Reich for Steve Reich, the minimalist, and Terry is short for Terry Riley, another American minimalist. These two are not very important. I did not really look into them, again, to keep it simple, but they are part of the story, no doubt. And just to be complete, if you want to do some research in this topic yourself, you might be interested in Wendy, Tomita, Jar, and Oldfield. And, well, who are these people? Wendy is a reference to Wendy Carlos, who famously made these albums called Switched on Bach, which used a Moog synthesizer to play Bach music. And then Tomita was basically the Japanese Wendy Carlos. Jar is Jean-Michel Jarre, the man who broke the most records in the Guinness Book of World Records for electronic concerts, I think. And then Oldfield, that refers to an English guy, Mike Oldfield, who was famous around the period of Autobahn for an album that was called Tubular Bells, and there are some parallels between this piece, Tubular Bells, and Autobahn. That's just small similarities, but they are there, and Oldfield actually shows up. So I thought I'd just mention that to be complete. So a little bit more about Honegger, because it is such an important asteroid in the story of Kraftwerk, and I really think you should, if for those who don't know what I'm talking about, you really should take note of this. So there was this piece of music, and I advise you to listen to it. Pacific 231. It is a ode to the locomotive that you see there. And if you listen to especially the beginning of this, how do you call it? Well, let's call it a piece of music. I don't know what the formal name is for it, but it starts with a locomotive slowly picking up steam and accelerating, and it will really remind you of Autobahn. It's just there. So no surprise really that Honegger was is part of the Kraftwerk story. And I just put some extra info there. You also find the asteroid Honegger conjuncted north node at the moment that this piece premiered in Paris in 1924. I just thought I'd mention that as well. And here, to give you a sense of what kind of a guy this Honegger was, I mean, what he says here is an interview, and that is he gives that interview in the period of this piece. And he talks about this train in terms of the Man-Machine. I mean, read it yourself. I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud for you, but this man is talking like a true Dadaist, like a true futurist, like a true Bruitist. Very modern talk here about man-machines and autobahns, really, but translated to a train in France. And finally, the last asteroids that I need to introduce to you before we can actually look at the charts. If you've seen the Beatles story, then you are already familiar with them. It's very basic stuff about drummen, and drummen is just references to drumming. Bass, bassano, basso is references to playing a bass, or actually also in this case bass lines and sequenced bass lines. And trilling is a Dutch word. It means vibration, and it's connected to the idea that you have with electronic music, you make music for loudspeakers, not so much acoustic stuff, but electroacoustic stuff. And then records, tape, and platte are connected to the process of recording and also the output, especially platte. I did not use platte in the Beatles story. Looking back, I should have done that, but then again, this is what always happens, you know. I mean, 5 minutes after I stop working on a video, I find a new asteroid that I have overlooked, and that is also important, and well, tough luck. Platte is a German, you could say a German reference to a record. So you have the German word Schallplatte, which is literally a piece of vinyl. Then a little look at the dates I will be using in the rest of the video, because it works as follows. I will look at two themes. I will look at the cultural background, you know, the denazification, the utopian thing. And I will, after that, I will look at the formal qualities of the music, the symmetric bass lines, etc. And what I will do is for both of those subjects, I will look at 3 different dates. I will look at the date of the first Kraftwerk concert, I will look at the release of Autobahn, and I will look at the release of the album Trans-Europe Express. And now, to start with the first one, what is actually the first concert by Kraftwerk? And that is a bit of a riddle. I want to give you here the source that I used to get to the proper date. It's first I thought that the open air festival in Aachen was the first Kraftwerk concert, but then you look at in the internet, and there's always some guy in the internet in some forum who has even more information, and you see that on the right. It's a concert in a small venue in the Wuppertal area, and it's, to me, it looks valid in the sense that it is an actual Kraftwerk concert. But if I look at the charts for the 2 dates, there are some significant differences, and I think there's a story there that basically says that the first date, so 6th of June in Elberfeld, is probably the first concert where Kraftwerk used the name Kraftwerk, so in that sense it's the first concert. But the next one, which is about a month later, they have like 100 times more public there. It is a festival with big names like Deep Purple and Pink Floyd and so on, and it's really the launch of Kraftwerk as a band, you could say. So just look at these charts, and basically all you have to do is count the number of aspects. I mean, if you want a formal way to work with asteroids, just count aspects and maybe order them according to, going from conjunction to sextile. But, I mean, there's just much more going on in the Aachen concert, and that's why I see that as the launch of Kraftwerk, and I use this date to compare it with the release date of Autobahn and Trans-Europe Express. So now you know what themes I'm interested in, what asteroids I want to use for the analysis, and you know what dates I have chosen. And now we get to the point that I'm going to look at the relative importance, let's say, of the asteroids Ixion and Selqet, and the ones that are connected to the theme of utopianism and so on. And I will look at the relative importance during the first concert, during the release of Autobahn, and during the release of Trans-Europe Express. In other words, when is this Ixion theme most pronounced? When is the Selqet thing most pronounced? When is the most utopian stuff in the air? Is it during the first concert? Is it during Autobahn, etc.? That's basically what I will be looking at. So, the first concert, well, it is of course a horrible mess, this chart that you see there. And I mean, I've told you that I try to use a minimum of asteroids, and maybe you understand now why. And to help you get through this, let's really focus. Let's focus on those asteroids that I told you about, and try to make a story out of this. And how can we focus? Well, one way to weed out the stuff that is less important is to focus on planetary conjunctions. And if we look at the first concert, the planetary conjunction of Utopia plus Wilson-Harrington, which is, let's say, a utopian asteroid, with Jupiter, well, that is a nice start. And it's trining Bauhaus, so there's another utopian one, and it's squaring Teutonia. Make of that what you want. I'm not going to say that Teutonia stands for old school Germans or new school Germans. I'm not sure. So just make of that what you want. But quintiling Europeus is building up a new Europe. Especially with Make again, this idea of engineering. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then we also have Mars and Mercury in a conjunction with Zauberflöte, which again is a magic flute. Lot of stuff. Also remember that Florian Schneider was playing flute at the moment of the first concert. I mean, to set the scene for people who don't know, this first concert there were no robots, there were no computers. That is really something for the later part of the 70s. In other words, it would make sense for Zauberflöte to be especially present in the early years, although that doesn't have to be, but it would make sense. Another way to weed out the stuff that's less important, I mean, you can look at planetary conjunctions. You can also look at other patterns like grand trines, grand crosses, or really, I've called them clusters before, really strong groupings, conjunctions of asteroids. Then we find Kraft, which stands for Kraftwerk, conjunct Selqet, the antidote, conjunct Sirene, Sirene, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's this quality of a magical chant coming from a mermaid-like person who, you know, think of the Odyssey, think of Odysseus who was tied to the mast and listened to the sound of the sirens, stuff like that. What is important here is that Kraftwerk is connected to Rote Kapelle, Selqet is in the air. But what you see is that Ixion is not doing much yet, if I can put it like that. Ixion will become more important at the later dates, as you will see. But right now it is opposite Hut, which stands for Ralf Hütter. It's trining the north node, looking forward. There is some stuff going on. All the really important asteroids are doing stuff, but Ixion is certainly not at its peak here. So here is the second date, the release of Autobahn. New date, exactly the same set of asteroids. So of course we get the same old mess, and we have to use the same strategy to make sense of this mess. And we start again with the planetary conjunctions. And I would say that is a bingo moment. Ixion conjunct the Sun, conjunct Venus, trining Jupiter. I mean, how obvious do you want it? And also Rote Kapelle conjunct Pluto. So what you see here is the truly the real launch of Kraftwerk into international fame, and getting as a result of this release, getting their first tour in the United States and so on. So the Rote Kapelle is established. The theme of Ixion is firmly connected to the establishment of the Rote Kapelle, of the Kraftwerk team, the band. To me, this speaks volumes. And then there is a little bit more going on. We see Selqet is trining Volk, which stands for the people. Maybe more important is Germanicus plus Stil, which stands for creating a German style. And a few more things. Again, Zauberflöte showing up. But obviously the important ones here are Ixion and Rote Kapelle. Then the third date, we are now in 1977 with Trans-Europe Express. I have not looked at, or I've not included at least, Radioactiviteit, which was an album that came before this. For musical reasons, I decided to go with Trans-Europe Express. Anyway, what you see here is that Ixion is still connected to this release date in the form of a conjunction with Uranus. Now, what is the meaning of this, you might ask? And to be honest, I don't know. The only thing that I know is that Ixion is again connected to a release date of an album by Kraftwerk, which is in itself, I think, quite significant. But I mean, we're talking about a very complex phenomenon. This feeling of guilt, of bad karma that a large portion of the younger generation in Germany was carrying with them. And what you see, if it's conjunct Uranus, well, probably there's some change of some kind going on. But I'm not going to pretend that I know enough about German culture and this whole story to pinpoint why at this moment Ixion should be conjunct Uranus. I simply don't know. Also, Rote Kapelle is not really peaking at this moment as much as it was during the release of Autobahn. It does have the right kinds of conjunctions there, with Somnium pointing to hypnosis and the other stuff that I've introduced you. Again, Zauberflöte, it keeps popping up every time. It's the same kind of thing as Somnium, pointing to hypnosis through music. Selqet, not very strong. It is connected to Weimar. If you don't know what Weimar is, it is the period between the First World War and the Second World War in Germany was called the Weimar Republic. Weimar is also connected to Bauhaus. You could say that Selqet is doing something there in the sense that it is combining the concept of Weimar with Kraftwerk. If we look at the first concert, the release of Autobahn and the release of Trans-Europe Express, you can really say that the release of Autobahn is the seminal moment, is really the moment when two things happen. The establishment of the Rote Kapelle, of Kraftwerk, you see that symbolized in the conjunction with Pluto, a revolutionary new quartet of musicians that hits the big time, if you want to put it like that. And exactly at that same moment, we see that Ixion is in a very positive light, in a optimistic environment, conjunct the Sun and Venus. It is a positive wave going across Europe, across the world. Maybe not immediately. I mean, a lot of people did not like this tune, of course, Autobahn. A lot of them did, but some didn't like it. It took some time, but that doesn't have to be included in the astrological story per se. It is about the moment of the birth, and we see at this moment that let's say that you could interpret this as a positive sense of cultural pride returning to Germany. I have no problem putting it like that. Musical symmetry, straight lines in music and maybe elsewhere, straight lines of the Autobahn, straight lines of the inner city that inspired Kraftwerk. This type of symmetry is the second theme that I want to explore using asteroids. And just to refresh your memory, there is a bunch of asteroids that we can use to look at this aesthetic, and I'm more or less combining the idea of symmetry and abstraction with these machines that play autonomous, like a drum computer. That's an autonomous machine. You just press play and it will not stop until you tell it to stop. That's what I think of in terms of autonoma, automaton, and even roboti, bool, is all this idea of automation. And then miniti was the minimalism, and still was for style, or minimal style, abstract style, whatever. Honegger and Darmstadt, I explained, was more the cultural references, and Drummond, bass, bassano, etc. These are really studio tools that and elements of the music that have have surprisingly much to say, if I can put it like that. What you might expect looking at the formal aspect of the music is that the early Kraftwerk, which is not using robots, not using drum computers, but instead relying on hand-played synthesizers, on echo machines, Farfisa organs, stuff like that. You know, what I want to say is the influence of this abstract stuff, this minimalist stuff, it would be normal if it would increase over time, and would maybe reach an apex around computer world, or maybe a little earlier the Man-Machine. So let's see if that is indeed the case. Starting again with the first concert, we don't see a lot of symmetry or automation or stuff like that in the air. The most important planetary conjunction is Zauberflöte, which we've seen before with Mars and Mercury. I've used Zauberflöte in both the analysis because of the, it is halfway between the form and the utopian thing. So that's why I show it again, and it's quintiling bassano or bass, but that's not a lot. Patterns, well, not too convincing either. We do see Darmstadt opposite Pluto, which I think is significant, pointing to the influence of, let's say, the neo-classical tradition that is shaping in Darmstadt around people like Stockhausen. Symmetria, quintiling bass, not really saying a lot, and autonoma, quintiling abstracta, not saying a lot. So not a lot happening here. Then we go on to Autobahn, and I have to explain something for people who are not that familiar with Kraftwerk music production, because during the time of Autobahn, everything was still hand-played. There were no real computers, no real robots. Everything you hear on that recording is really hand-played. And that's why Ralf and Florian recruited professional, classically trained percussionists, Karl Bartos and Wolfgang Flür, because they needed guys who could play really tight. And indeed they did this. It sounds like it's automated, but it's not. Autobahn is all made by hand, and probably musically speaking, the most notable new thing is the bass line, and that is a synthesizer bass line, of course, but the very steady pulse that is in this bass line is in fact created by an echo machine. So there's your machine, but it's not a sequencer, it's not a drum computer, it's just an echo. Planetary conjunctions. We already saw Rote Kapelle conjunct Pluto, but Honegger is exactly in the same place. So there's more going on there, and we see now that Honegger is really an important influence, an important cultural reference. How should I put it? Something like that. Darmstadt as well, because it is conjunct Neptune. And by the way, when I say that asteroids show up, that I find them, this is basically what I mean. I find them by looking at planetary conjunctions. And then Symmetria, I found that also through a planetary conjunction, but that comes later. And once you find this one, I mean, it clicked immediately with me, because symmetry is to me is really the essence of the Kraftwerk sound as a musician, and I saw it opposite Saturn, and Saturn here you should really see as form, shaping, giving form, and that's exactly what is going on here. Boel opposite drummen means that there is a logic to the way they handle the drum part. And well, this is very much the case if you look at those old videos, you see Wolfgang and I think also Carl playing these electronic drum machines, and in the way in which they are Boolean, you could say. Boolean is simply a logic that is based on or off. It's either black or white, nothing in between. And this is exactly what you get with the sound on Autobahn, because these sounds they have a volume control in there, but basically what Kraftwerk does is trigger drum sounds from a drum machine using these funny looking trigger pads, and well, it's most of the time it is either on or off. It is a 1 or a 0. It is Boolean. It is a Boolean way of working with drums. Then we have Autonoma, opposite Kraftwerk, just making all these connections that are relevant. But again, my personal focus is on Symmetria, and the other stuff I just show you because there is these patterns. We have a grand cross, and we also have a grand trine with Make and Roboti and Somnium, which is really saying a lot. Robots making hypnotic music, trining Boel again, and trining Werk for Kraftwerk. It's, to me, this speaks volumes. And finally, the release of Trans-Europe Express. What is Symmetria doing here? What is Honegger doing here? Well, Symmetria is conjunct Saturn here, and that means, in some sense, you could say that Kraftwerk has found their form on Trans-Europe Express. And how could you translate this for someone who is maybe not a studio technician or musician? How do you think of this? Personally, I would say that you could get an idea by comparing the remixes that Kraftwerk has made of these old albums with the original. And if you do that, you will notice that the rhythmic feel, which is basically what Symmetria is about. It's about that stiff pattern that like the people from Detroit say, the funkiness of Kraftwerk. They are funky because they are so stiff. Stuff like that is what they say, and that is the Symmetria, and it has found its definitive form by the conjunction with Saturn. And if you listen to the remix of Trans-Europe Express, you will find that the essence is already in the programming of the beats in the original. And this is not so much the case if you look at, for example, Radioactiviteit. There is a much bigger difference between the remix that was made like 20-30 years later and the original. And to me personally, that is a sign that Kraftwerk thought that Radioactiviteit was not sounding that modern at the time, and that it needed an update, and the update for Trans-Europe Express is much more subtle in my ears at least. And I would say that Trans-Europe Express, the beats, this is the first time that the beats are really definitive Kraftwerk. Like I said, the Autobahn rhythm was basically hand played, but with Trans-Europe Express you have the machines taking over, and that is the Symmetria conjunct Saturn. And then you also have bass plus trilling, for example, in the patterns, which has electric bass, abstracta plus drummen plus roboti, which is again drum machines making a minimal style, abstract style. Honegger is there, conjunct Jupiter, not unimportant. Darmstadt is there, everything is there, but for me the number one thing to look at is Symmetria again. Of course, I need to remind you that Honegger is about trains and Trans-Europe Express is about trains. I hadn't mentioned that yet, but there you go. And look at the symmetry also of this traffic sign. It's all coming together. So I think what I got personally out of this little excursion, this little investigation, is the importance of Symmetria for the musical style, the importance of Honegger, especially for the cultural relevance of Pacific 231, linked to be linked to Autobahn, because let's put it like this. Kraftwerk is so big that academia has sees it fit to write lots of books about Kraftwerk, lots of academic blah blah blah. And if you look at all these articles, you search them, you search for the keyword Honegger, you find maybe one article that mentions this connection, because it is there, it is obvious, and people find it. But it's funny to me that in the sky, so to speak, this story is much more underlined, is deemed much more important. And well, I think that is a really nice addition to the what academia has to say. It is saying, look at these two works and look at where Honegger is coming from, and you will see that it's the same story. It's really the same vibe. And then Darmstadt, yeah, well, it's a little less important, I guess, but it's part of the story. But yeah, I'm really happy with Symmetria, and I thought I want to check it a little further, because if it works in these charts, it should also work in other charts. I mean, basically every piece of music that has a revolutionary that can be seen as a revolutionary step in making music sound more computerized and more tight, Symmetria should show up, and that would be a verification of what I'm of the story that I'm pushing here. So what are a few ways to check what I just said, especially for the asteroid Symmetria? Well, you could, for example, check I Feel Love by Donna Summer, because, I mean, that was such a overwhelming new sound also, just like Autobahn, but I Feel Love was even more symmetric. I mean, it was 16 notes. Each 16th note in the bass line in that 16-note sequencer pattern was filled with a sharp-sounding attack and a very full bass. That, yeah, there's certain aggressiveness there, but most of all, these straight lines. This very, it sounded like the future for people. But if you look at it, and then I have to say I look at the release date of the album. not the single, but the album. And if you look at it, you see Symmetria conjunct basso, which makes perfect sense. It's a perfectly symmetric bass line there. It's octaves and fifths and dead straight. But the whole album by Donna Summer was actually a concept album that did music from, I think, the 40s, maybe the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. It was all over the place. And on the other hand, Kraftwerk, they made Symmetria, they made these straight lines. It was the essence of their musical identity. And that is a big difference. So while Donna Summer, I Feel Love is a important, let's say, moment in computer music history or synthesizer music history, you only find here Symmetria with bass in terms of hinting at a very straight bass line, but that's it. And then we get the really, 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 really big one, Symmetria conjunct Pluto. So what is happening there? Well, we have Die Mensch-Maschine, and in a way, you could say that this is Kraftwerk's answer to I Feel Love, or you could also, that's not really how you should put it probably, but it is integrating everything that I Feel Love stands for, but in their own way. What you get in a very music technical sense with the Man-Machine album is these same 16th patterns that are very tight, and they are filled with clicks, very, very sharp transients. And this gives, musically, this gives a feeling that is not that far removed from the bass line in I Feel Love, but it is a tool that can be used in every tune where you want to use these clicks, because it's just like a rhythmic element. And combined with more sequencers, more straight lines everywhere, this is like Kraftwerk's definitive sound of the future. And first, they found their form with Symmetria conjunct Saturn, but now with Symmetria conjunct Pluto, we have a worldwide revolution in dance music, nothing less. So that's how I read that one. And then Computerwelt is so funny because again Symmetria is showing up, but this time it is opposite Pluto. And personally, I think of that as the big work has already been done, and yeah, how else can you put it? A tip of the hat? I don't know. And if you look at Donna Summer, I Feel Love, if you look at Kraftwerk, what is another maybe legendary 12-inch or something that you could put in that what that you could also compare this with? Well, I chose Blue Monday, which is quite a hit, and it is a lot of people think that it is a very important track. And what you see there is that Symmetria is sextiling Saturn, and that's not a lot. That's not really revolutionary or very not a very strong statement. And how I personally interpret this is that for New Order, buying synthesizers and buying drum machines was really an afterthought. That was not. I mean, they started doing that kind of stuff with Blue Monday, and it was a big hit. I mean, no arguments about that. But they were really a guitar band before this the success of Blue Monday, and it's a very different type of thing if you compare it with Kraftwerk. It's the same thing like with Donna Summer. It gets the Symmetria conjunct bass, but that album, that Donna Summer album, was not conceptually about symmetry. about musical symmetry. And Kraftwerk's, all the stuff they put out ever since Autobahn has been about musical symmetry, is what I would say. I think I've said enough about Kraftwerk now. I started this musical series with Bob Dylan and Bob Marley, the two Bobs, and now I've done two bands that are considered very influential, the Beatles and Kraftwerk. And I think I want to do two more, one about Madonna and one about Beyonce. Madonna, arguably the biggest star of the 20th century, and you know, still continuing to be relevant in the 21st century. Cannot pass that by. We have to take a look at Madonna, and then 21st century Beyonce. I think she's also very important. So that's what I still have in store for you.